And welcome, fight fans. Thank you for joining me tonight, actually. I'm Mark G. This is the 203 Fight Network, and this is your UFC Fight Night recap and results. We got news on the fights that were on this afternoon or this morning, whichever way you need to look at it. But it's a little bit after 11:30. Sorry I'm starting so late, but I had some things I had to take care of before I jumped there on air live. But I'm very happy to be here. And I have the recap and results from UFC Stockholm. Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira. It was a great day of fights. Left you with some fights and then some stuff to do around either the yard or, the house, or watch some baseball, whatever floats your fancy. But we had some fights on in the afternoon. It reminded me of back in the day when we had those ABC fights going on. But give me a minute, not a minute, but a few seconds coming up after the intro, and we will have the results from today and what went on. And we're still going to talk about a little bit what went on this week and what we got coming up in the future in MMA, in Bellator, and in the UFC. Thanks for joining me again. Stay tuned. Thank you, fight fans. Once again, I'm Mark G. I'm very happy to be here tonight. It is still May 28th, 2017. But coming very close up on being May 29th. Got some packages coming on the 30th, so I'm pretty excited. We'll see how that all works out. But what a night of fights. I mean, what a day of fights. Like I said real quick on the intro, kind of reminded me back in the day when I was a kid and you'd get those Saturday, or I think they're more Saturday afternoon fights. They would be, on ABC, the old boxing matchups. You'd see guys like Alexis Arguello or Aaron Pryor, old school matches like, maybe Marvin Hagler. I mean, these were, some crazy old matchups from back in the day, and Don, actually a lot of them put on by good old Don King, who even by the year 1990 or 91, early 90s, by the early 90s, Don King had already been the most sued boxing promoter in the history of the world. At that point. So I don't know how it all shaken out since then. I guess that's pretty bad if you've been sued that many times. But like I said, very excited, very very happy with today's fights. I did miss the Fight Pass Prelims. First two, saw the ending of the third. At least I believe it was. I woke up late. I was up late, woke up late. It was just one of those days you're always just happy that you wake up, every day that you wake up, from sleep, and then that's a good freaking day. I don't care who you are. But before we get into it and get into the attendance, and we'll get into the fight night bonuses, and go over the main and the surprisingly fast co-main event, and the rest of the fights, which were actually very obviously very very exciting, and pretty action packed. A lot of the prelims were pretty good. Were actually very how do you say? I mean, the prelims had some pretty exciting finishes, and so did the main card. So you got to give it to Stockholm. They have some great fans, man. They come out for a lot of their fighters. We had a lot of hometown people from home Swedish fighters on the card. Obviously on top of being Alexander Gustafsson, in the main and in the co-main, you had some hometown guys that maybe don't train in Sweden as much anymore. I know Volkan has trained with Henry Hoof in Florida down there at his new camp. I don't know if he was at ATT before. I did hear something about that. So we'll see how that shakes out with him and where he gets matched up next. He was kind of calling out a Jimmy Manoa, saying that he thought that would be a really good matchup for him. And I don't really think that'd be a bad matchup at all, considering is Manoa going to get that next shot, or is he going to get skipped over by Alex now that Alex won what a lot of people deem to be very impressive, very over Glover. I thought it was. We'll get into it a little more in a few, but I did think it was. He did start kind of impress me once Glover got a little more tired. Once it seemed like Glover. Not saying Glover has bad cardio, would never say that, but the shots he was taking on top of what he was trying to put out, and trying to wrestle, trying to box, trying to kick, just trying to mix everything in there. It was definitely it definitely tired. It looked like it tired Glover out, and you saw that. I was really disappointed with a lot of the way that Alex was avoiding contact and avoiding, I don't want to say avoid fighting, but he was definitely avoiding trying to, stand in a pocket, you can say. But I'm not one to criticize, and I'm definitely not going to criticize his game plan or how he, what he did in that fight and what he did to win. Because he has nothing to prove to me or anybody. So, before we get into it, I do want to talk about some of the past week real quick. Just, I do want to go over kind of a little bit with TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt and the new title fight on UFC 213 in July. It's like my birthday weekend usually. I've been to Las Vegas. Been there a couple of times. One time there around that 4th of July, where it gets a little crazy. So it's if you get a chance to get out there, it's if you can stand the heat, it's pretty awesome. But not here to talk about Las Vegas in July. But I do like the matchup with the new interim 185-pound belt, Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero. No matter how he came to get the wins that he has gotten over the last few years, whether it be shady, some of the things he's done during the fights, in between rounds, some stuff that he's done before the fights, or stuff that he's done after the fights, or obviously I know he's been cleared of any wrongdoing. I guess you can say he was cleared, but I'm talking about Yoel Romero and a lot of the antics that that you see in a lot of his fights. From the Tim Kennedy incident to even after that, where he was wetting himself down too much, to the tainted supplements. There's a lot of things, But I'm not here to criticize the way, a lot of that stuff was shady to me. But at the time, and there's no foul called. Obviously, in the Tim Kennedy incident, he should have not even won that fight. Should be such a whole different landscape and just everything. You don't even know how different everything could be right now from that point. But it is what it is. Whitaker, we all know, is that Ultimate Fighter smashes, the old tough smashes season winner. He impressed me on there, but he was very quiet, and he kind of came out of, he did win some very exciting fights, on that season. I'm just saying that, quiet, in his personality. There was always a lot of big. You're always going to find sometimes a lot of those big personalities on the Ultimate Fighter shows, whether it be in Brazil, whether it be the Brits, the Australia, Canada, United States, wherever they're doing it, or however they broke it down to how they were gonna break up the teams and the contestants. So excuse me. I hope I hope both these guys get cleared in, and I hope there's no funny business, before the fights with USADA or anything like that. I just hope this fight gets down and gets in comes about. I'm not going to pick anybody yet. Yoel Romero will always kind of surprise you. The one thing I do give a little bit of the advantage to, and I hate really doing this, but you do kind of see it now as you get older yourself. I like Whitaker. He's kind of young, and he's in that prime. Moving up from welterweight, he was definitely saying how he was pretty big from what he walks around at, and trying to get down to 170 was really hurting him, really hurting his performance, and he is knocked out by Wonderboy at 170, and he had a couple other losses in there. So moving back up, I believe he's undefeated. So that win over Jacare and a couple of the wins before, obviously the win over Jacare is super impressive. And you didn't hear anything coming out. At least I didn't hear anything coming out. If anybody has, please put it in the comments. Did Jacare claim any injury going into that fight, like most they do most of the time, after they lose? I'm just curious. I don't think he did. And I think if he didn't, that's great. I've always liked Jacare, one of my more favorite Brazilian fighters. Him and Junior Dos Santos. Junior Dos Santos, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Jacare Sosa. Three of my favorite, Brazilians. I like those guys a lot. They tough fighters. Always kind of respectful. You never hear too many excuses out of them. At least not at the time. Maybe it might come out a couple of years later or something, because obviously people do go through certain injuries and whatnot through the training camps. Now, Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw. Now, where does this put Tough? Where does this put where does this put everything? Like, is DJ gonna fight TJ? You know what I mean? Is Demetrius gonna end up fighting TJ in August? How bad is Cody's injury that he can't fight almost 6 weeks after? You know what I mean? Like, this is towards the end of August, as far as I know. It's not like I don't think it's a beginning card. I think it's so that's like 5-6 weeks. So we're still right now at least 5 weeks out. 5 closer to 6 weeks out from that July card. So these two right now, Whitaker and Yoel, going to be the co-main. main event once again. Will once again back-to-back years on this in the summer event during International Fight Week. You're going to have Amanda Nunes main eventing a card. She's going to be fighting Shevchenko. I believe, hopefully I got that right. Sometimes then you start to get confused with a lot of these Eastern European names, but I'm not looking at anything either right now. Everything right here is off the top of my head, so see how that goes. And I didn't realize how long I did the opening here, so we're gonna take a quick break, about 30 seconds, and when we are gonna come back, and we are gonna talk about the fights this morning, Alexander, and we're gonna talk about the main card and the prelims, and like I said, we'll be right back. So hang in there one sec. All right, fight fans, thank you for hanging in there. All right. It's getting starting to feel a little hot up here in the 203, so just wanted to take a little bit of a quick drink and get reset up. So the attendance tonight, this morning, was 12,668 for a live gate of 1,920,000. That's what the UFC officials had announced for the event. UFC Fight Night 109 took place at the Ericsson Globe in Stockholm. The card aired on FS1 following early prelims on the UFC Fight Pass, which I missed, which was at 9 a.m. Unbelievable. But the UFC made its debut in Sweden in 2012 and has hosted 5 shows total in the country. UFC Fight Night 109 marked the latest Swedish card, all of which have taken place in the city of Stockholm. Only one UFC on Fox 14, Gustafsson Johnson, took place somewhere else other than the Ericsson Globe. So they have some rankings. UFC on Fuel TV2, Gustafsson Silva, if you all remember that. I do. Thiago Silva. Remember on Fuel. Also Musashi versus Latifi. Wow, I gave him him. Musashi was actually fighting when they still had Fuel going on. But that was last night's was ranked 3rd all time behind those two. UFC on Fuel TV2 and UFC on Fuel TV9, and they're not bad attendance and not very bad. Not a very bad gate for them. So definitely was some interesting fights. Very hard to call the fight of the night bonuses, but that's not really my job, so that's actually probably a really good thing. So, reporting from MMA Junkie, it was a one-sided fight, but today's UFC Fight Night 109 main event earned the Fight of the Night honors. Headliners Alexander Gustafsson and Glover Teixeira, as well as preliminary card victors Bojan I'm sorry, I can get this right because I remember Velikovic and Damir Hastovic earned $50,000 for Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night bonuses. So congratulations to all those guys. Took home some performance of the night and fight of the night. Actually, very, very surprised that the co-main didn't get any performance of the night. But, like I said before, who am I to really criticize? I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to give you some recap and some results and a little bit of a perspective and opinion. So, hopefully, we see how this all shakes out for the light heavyweight division. Now, Alexander Gustafsson defeated Glover Teixeira tonight via knockout punch. Basically, he landed, it was like left, right uppercut, left, right uppercut, left, right uppercut. And it was crazy because it was almost like a video game. And on the third one, it just seemed like, all right, that was it. And that was after about 5 rounds of Alex just kind of sticking and moving, if you want to call it that. It was a little shocking just to see him kind of run away like he was doing, a bunch of times throughout the fight. I was really kind of disappointed in that, to be perfectly honest. I really wish that I was really kind of hoping that it wouldn't come to that. It was if you missed the fight, he was kind of running away. So it's real similar to the way that Overeem was running away from Stipe in their recent title fight back in October in Cleveland. Then he finally caught him out. You just don't kind of like to see that, I guess you could say, and it was really kind of shocking. But he wasn't like totally running away, avoiding punishment like Caleb Stern, back in the day, which was total. I couldn't believe that. But he was running, but he also was landing a lot of shots and causing a lot of damage, back and forth. Gustafsson really kind of impressed me when a lot of the exchanges and a lot of the his footwork and a lot of things he was doing. It was impressive. It was just one of those things, a lot of the avoidance of contact, and I guess you can say. But I really really happy to see him win. He needs to get on a streak now. He's won 2 in a row, so we'll see how he goes from here. They are kind of calling for, I guess you could say, a title shot. I think he would really kind of prefer to fight John Jones for some reason. That's who I think he really wants to rematch. Although I think a rematch with Cormier, he really gives Cormier a lot of problems. I think because of his length and how he moves, and he's really really good, at wrestling takedowns and defense. I think that training with Phil Davis and a lot of that, what he does with Phil Davis has really, really helped him out. And I think that really benefits him when it comes to the matchup with Cormier. Says he will not fight Manoa. They fought once before. I believe he finished Manoa by TKO sometime after the Jones fight. That was one of his fights that he won in between a lot of this. He's had a rough stretch with the lost to Anthony Rumble, and the loss to Cormier, and he's some wins in between there. He had a little bit of a lackluster win against Blachowicz or Blachowicz, who is really in some danger of getting cut from the UFC if you look at his record. They actually had him ranked in their top 15, which I thought was laughable. No offense to him at all, but he's lost like 3 in a row, 4 out of 5, some crazy number like that. So to get into the co-main event, which was totally hyped up by myself, and I had picked Misha Serkinov in this fight because Misha Serkinov it's like fighting a bear If you've watched him fight in his any of his previous UFC fights, man, he's just a beast. But this, Volkan Ozdemir is a beast in his own right as well, and he had a very impressive UFC debut against Ovince St. Preux, and he was really super impressive in this. He has been ranked. He was ranked number 5 in the top. He was ranked 5th in their rankings with that one victory over St. Preux, which a lot of people, including myself, were a little skeptical of that ranking, especially them ranking him over a guy, against Serkinov, who was 4-0, the UFC, 4 finishes, and, really has been impressive so far. But Ozdemir came in, and he's a scary dude, man. And he hit him with a short shot, kind of like behind the ear, like right on the side, temple, ear, or wherever he hit him. And I don't know if his head bounced off the cage as well, or just don't know, man. But where he hit him, it definitely had an echo through Serkinov's head, man, because he just immediately hit the ground, and this was 20 seconds into the fight. So, Volkan threw some more shots with him on the ground. Ref came in and tried to stop it as fast as he could. Fight over, 28 seconds, first round. Volkan Ozdemir defeats Misha Serkinov by knockout. Crazy, amazing. Like I said earlier, Ozdemir is, I guess you can say, I don't know, you're calling out Jimmy Manoa, so we'll see where that goes. Was Manoa want to sit out as long as he's about to sit out? He has been talking about boxing David Hay, I believe, and from all reports, I guess Dana White is pretty receptive to it. So we'll see where that lies and how that all comes about. We'll definitely see if maybe he fights there on the undercard of that. A lot of people said if that's to happen, if you're to see a bunch of the UFC fighters fighting boxers on the undercard of this fight, it might take away from the specialness also of the McGregor Mayweather. And I'm going to talk a little bit about McGregor Mayweather at the end of the recap here. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about Bellator NYC, because if you've watched any of my other videos or podcasts or reviews, recaps, anything I've done so far, I've been on air here for about going on a month, close to 2 months now. I do reviews every Wednesday for the Tough 25 Redemption season. I will be doing reviews for Dana White's new show in July coming up on Tuesday nights. It's going to be in UFC Fight Pass. Any UFC pay-per-view. I'm trying to do some more of the Bellator. I do talk a little bit about the Bellator in the previews and whatnot. I definitely will be previewing and reviewing their NYC Bellator 180 card, even though I do not think that main event is going to happen. The main event will probably end up being Fedor versus Mitrione. I don't see SONNEN and SILVA fighting. SILVA's been out way too long. Anyway, moving on to the next fight on the card, which was Peter Sabata versus Ben Saunders. This would look like it's just like a total mismatch, which is total surprise to me, because I've always been kind of Ben Saunders. Had a lot of admiration for Ben Saunders. I've always liked his game. He's always had those long kicks and long knees. I always thought he was a decent striker. Always fought very good jiu-jitsu off his back. Was just a tough kid. Met him actually once in Boston at UFC 118 back in the day. Was really cool. Was actually met him during when the fights were going on. He was walking around. He came and sat, with us for about, not even 2 minutes, because he said he couldn't really sit still. So I was like, that's cool. I understand that, man. But like I said, nice kid. Had his stints up and down throughout the UFC. But this Sobata, Peter Sobota, the Polish Prancer, let's call him, he was just a destroyer in this fight. Destroyer. Just destroyed Ben Saunders. Made him look like Ben Saunders looked like he should be fighting, in some local show. That's really unfortunately the way he made, Ben look tonight. And TKO round 2 was just totally. First round, Ben was trying to fight back a little bit as much as he could off his back and do what he can, but took a lot of damage. And in that second round, just could not handle that much anymore. You can just tell that you can just tell that was definitely hurting him. And ref came in there and stopped it. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where he goes from here. I sure hope he gets maybe another shot. When you look that mismatched in the UFC, a lot of times they kind of let you go and tell you, hey man, go get some wins, and some strong wins on the circuit, and then give us a call back. At least that's back in the old Joe Silva days. With Nick Maynard, I'm not very sure on how he works. I'm sure he has the same type of philosophies as Joe Silva in a way, because that's who they replaced him with, and I bet you they did not want to stray too far off from Joe Silva, who was just a great matchmaker, man, over the years and was involved for such a long time. Moving on to the next fight, Omari Akhmedov defeats Abdul Razak Al Hassan via split decision. I actually didn't think this fight was as close. I know that a lot of people did, and Al Hassan landed a lot of power shots, but it just seemed like whenever he was about to get off, Akhmedov just landed some takedowns and landed a lot of ground and pound and landed a lot in the feet too, and a lot of the exchanges. I don't have my notebook, from when I was watching the fight next to me, but I do remember really kind of thinking that this was, I mean, there were some closer rounds, and I guess you can say maybe, Al Hassan could have stole one of those rounds here or there, but I didn't have him winning. I didn't have him really winning at least two of the rounds. He could have won it, maybe one, maybe in the second. Sometimes those things slow down. Like I said, he did land some power shots, and he did have his moments, man. And it was a really, really good fight. And you were kind of almost really on the edge of your seat because you really didn't know what might come about in this fight, considering how some of the prelims went, and because the first prelims that started at 11 a.m. man, there were some really, really good fights. We'll go over that as we go down the card, but I was so impressed by a couple of those beginning fights, especially the Madadi Silva fight. So split decision win for Akhmedov. Not the last we'll hear from Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who is definitely a guy you don't want to stand in front of for too long. So this was the longest fight of his career. All his fights, from what they were saying on the broadcast, had ended in the first round in like the first 2 minutes. I believe he was like 7-0 or 8-0 going in. So he'll definitely be back soon. Maybe he'll be back sooner rather than later. I did hear something about he trained at the same type of same camp as Hendricks does or used to. If that's the case, maybe you see him in about 6 weeks. I think it is 7 weeks. Maybe you see him 6-7 weeks on that Oklahoma card, the Kevin Lee Michael Chiesa main event card, which is definitely going to be interesting, and I can't wait to see more of the build up to that fight. So this fight was definitely interesting, and there was a late replacement, hometown kid named Oliver Enkamp, who really looked, and I guess he, was really taking a lot of heat just because he really looked young. And hey, man, good for you. He really looks young. I was just like, holy cow, what is it? Kid looks like he's 17, I guess. So he's 25, and you want to tell him he looks young, call him looks young, or looks like a boy or a young kid or whatever. That young kid will whip your. I don't want to swear, trying to keep this family friendly. I swear a lot in, ordinary life. So if I don't swear on here, that's, I'm doing some good. But I do have a mouth like a trucker. So, but I only drive a car. But I try to swear a lot when I'm not in front of the mic. Anyhow, this was a great fight, man. And this kid is a super tough man. Gave Nordine Talib a little bit of a hard time. But in the end, it really just kind of looked like an old, that older lion. Not old lion, older lion. Just lion more mature. That's just been through a few of those battles, messing around with the, that younger lion who just wasn't ready to overtake this one yet. And there was some times where Enkamp looked like he hurt Talib and Taleb's just he's just a bold man. I really enjoyed watching him on that Ultimate Fighter, and I've enjoyed kind of keeping track of his career in the UFC, that kind of how he's done so far. And it's really I think if he can string some more wins together, he might be able to put himself in the some talks against some top ranked guys, and maybe make a little more money and get his name out there. There was definitely some good fighters on that season he was on, so see how that starts to develop. But he ended up winning unanimous decision. Basically, I had him winning all 3 rounds. The first round was kind of close, but like I said, you can just tell as that fight progressed and that fight went on, you can just see Nordine just had control and was more damage. Just took the fight at some points. It seemed like he can take it wherever he wanted to. So I was really impressed. But I was still in a loss. You got to be really impressed with the way Enkamp fought and how he hung in there. He seemed he got better throughout the fight. It was just great job on his part taking this fight on short notice against somebody just so experienced and so skilled, as Nordine. So the one thing that Enkamp had going for him was that, he was fighting obviously in his home country, his home turf. Talib coming from Canada, fights in a great camp up there in Montreal, with, Faraz Zahabi. And so he's gonna if he can string some wins together, man. I like to see him then match him up with somebody on the cusp like that, and see where they go from there. But the opening fight on the main card today, I keep saying tonight, so I'll tell you what, if you're out there and you're all at the Memorial Day party and you're listening every time I screw up and say tonight, not today, take a shot. Take a shot, take a drink, do something. I would take a drink of my water, but it's not open, and I'm just too freaking lazy to try and open that shit right now. So, Jack Hermanson defeated Alex Nicholson via TKO strikes, round 1, 2 minutes. Man, let me tell you, this fight, Hermanson just came out like a tornado, man. And you just, if you had your head down and you weren't really paying attention, you were like, what the hell just happened? And let me tell you, it was very impressive. Hermanson just took care of business super fast, man, and super fast. I'm sure he got a little bit of a bonus for this fight. He didn't get any of the performance of the night, but like I said, I'm sure he got a little bit of something. But he took Alex Nicholson out pretty fast. It was so fast I couldn't even remember Nicholson's name in my notes at the time. So it was pretty funny. Not funny for him, but he got up. He seemed fine. Everybody's cool. Nobody got hurt. Obviously, not laughing at anybody getting hurt or knocked out. We're not children here. So, and if you are young and you're up this late, hopefully that's not a school night, at least. But if you're watching around the world, it is now 12:14 Eastern Standard Time, May 29th, 2017. and it is Monday, officially Memorial Day here in the United States. And I'm Mark G. This is the 203 Fight Network. We are going over UFC Fight Night 109, Stockholm, Sweden. Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira, and what a fight! What a day of fights it was. I think what keeps screwing me up is UFC Fight Night 109 was in during the day here. So, we couldn't call it UFC Fight Morning because I guess in freaking Sweden, it was night. So I'm not trying. Let's get out of the semantics here. We still have some fights to talk about, including the fight that was on before Hermanson and Nicholson, which was the what do they call it? The premiere fight of the prelim card, the premiere, or I listen to it and then I freaking forget what it is. So I don't know. Take a drink. Anyway, Pedro Munoz defeated Damian Staszniak via unanimous decision. And this was a fight in the 145-pound featherweights, man. And Munoz is a beast. He's definitely moved himself up. Just totally outclassed Staszniak, who, hung in there, man. Even some of these fights that might have been a little bit lopsided, some of these unanimous decisions, they weren't, even if they were dominant, it wasn't like it was like too crazy embarrassing, I guess, for the opponents, man. All these guys fought hard, man, and so much respect for all the guys on this card. No female fights on this card, so not being sexist when I say I stand up through most of these, so sometimes I move around a little bit so my shit don't cramp up like my back, my arm, my legs. So, but Munoz just took this fight wherever he wanted, he did whatever he wanted, landed some hard shots, took some shots there or there. Like I said, Staszniak, tried to power through a lot of things and hung in there as much as he could. And obviously, he lasted the whole 15 minutes, so he didn't get finished. But, it was, I don't know how close it could have been at some points, but Munoz impressed me, man. I'd like to see him get someone in the actual top 10. And I think hopefully maybe this week, considering we have UFC 212, Max Holloway versus Jose Aldo. So considering that we have that coming up this week, this Saturday night, June 3rd, quite possibly, maybe I can get a little video out this week on, the state of the featherweight top 10. Maybe I'll do a top 10 show and get some of the get some of my rankings out there for reconfigured my 155, do a 145, do a 170, 185, 205. Man, it's a lot of work to put in all those divisions. But one division I want to talk about is the 115-pound women's division, the flyweights, man. That during tonight's broadcast, because you have number 2 and maybe it's number 1 and 2 or number 2 and 3. Catalina Kelvikavich. I sure hope I got your name right, honey, because she's so awesome. And Claudia, and I think it's Claudia Gadelia, fighting in the co-main of this Saturday. Sorry, man, that took a lot of brain power to bring that up, man. It's getting kind of late. I know we're going in almost at about 45 minutes now, so got some fights to go over and some things I want to talk about. And since we're live, and I'm hoping to grab some viewers and some listeners and some viewers as we go on, so I'm going to try to stay on for a little bit. So to everyone who probably is going to catch this video after, this is probably going to be a long one. So I hope I get some more views than what I've been getting, but I'm gonna, like I said, try to keep this up. And we're in green for this month. If y'all don't know what that is, that's look that up online. All right, so back to the fights. Trevor Hot Sauce Smith defeats Chris Camozzi via unanimous decision. Now, this was probably the only fight of the night where you had that unanimous decision where This was like a total other, like the other one where it was like super duper overmatched, like wow. And this was kind of crazy what Trevor Smith was really doing to Camozzi. In the first round, Camozzi was fighting back, like how he normally does, off his back. I think he is a brown belt now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I forgot through who. I'm sure I can look that up, but I'm not going through all that right now to look all that up right now. So if you want, you can look it up and throw it in the comments, and then if I see that, I'll read it later and then give you a thumbs up and thanks. And speaking of thumbs up, hit that thumbs up on the video if you're liking the content so far. I'm going to be putting out, I'm going to keep putting out videos. I've done some things here, so try and see how this all works out. But Trevor Smith dominated Chris Camozzi like you would not believe in this fight, and not too much to talk about. 30-27, 30-26, 30-26. I had it 30-26 as well. You can say 10-8 in that second, maybe 10-8 in the third, 10-9 in the first, because he was trying to really fight off his back and get some submissions. But in that second and third round, that he really wasn't going from there. Really wasn't fighting too much off his back, or it was sad. But we'll see. Unfortunately, I think this might be the at least the end of this line for Chris, C squared, for his this UFC stint for him. But hopefully he can bounce back. I know he's got some pretty good training partners from out there in Colorado, and I've always been kind of a fan. Remember him from the Ultimate Fighter days that he was on. He was actually on the episode. Can't remember the season he was on, but he was on and got hurt in the elimination fight, and they were like, "You got a broken jaw," and he was like, "Yeah, that's cool though. I can still fight though, right?" And he was almost like refusing to go home when they're like, "Dude, you have a broken jaw. We can't let you fight no more." But he's had a pretty long UFC career since then, so we'll see if he can recover from this and get bounce back and jump back in, or see if they keep him. We never know. But the fight, one of the fights I've been waiting to talk about, Razor Madadi versus Joaquin Silva. This was a fantastic fight, man. It started all at the weigh-ins. Madadi had talked about how this was probably going to be his last fight, and I got to tell you, going into the fight with him saying this was going to be his last fight, I was kind of skeptical with how he might perform, because we all know a lot of times how fighters perform, when they're calling out their retirement beforehand. It's very rare that you have like a Uriah Faber moment, really, or, a lot of times you have like a Brad Pickett moment, unfortunately, and that you end up getting knocked out in your retirement fight. But at least Brad Pickett was calling his retirement before all that. But moving on to Razor Madadi versus Joaquin Silva, which was a great fight, man. These guys were back and forth, and it just seemed like Madadi got really tired, and that kind of is probably what earned Silva the victory in a split decision. There was some key takedowns by Madadi in this fight. Definitely could give him that first round for sure. I believe I had him getting that first round for sure. He was doing very good in the exchanges. Very good exchange takedowns with his transitions and staying on top. Silva fought back up really well. Madadi avoided a lot of the submissions that were thrown up in Silva off of his back, and really kept them down to a minimum. Really did. So this fight was super close, man, and the crowd was so behind Madadi. Both their corners were really going at both these guys, in between rounds, and it was just a great fight. And just, if you turned on these fights, man, at like 11 o'clock, and you started watching these fights at 11, after kind of like when I started to watch these fights, and I believe, hold on, I'm just looking at something there real quick. Yeah, I believe that you know, it was definitely a cool way. You put your morning coffee in, make your eggs, pancakes, whatever the freaking man you're deciding to eat this, you know, this Memorial Day weekend Sunday morning, and you turn on FS1, and there were some fights, man, some battles, because the fight before this, you know, the Velkovic and the Masuke fight before this was super impressive, super technical. Just, I was so impressed, man. The two huge 170 pound fighters in the fight before the Madadi Silva fight, which we're going to transition to right now. So just in case you missed it, if you lose track of what I'm saying, sometimes I do, Joaquim Silva defeats Reza Madadi via split decision 29-28, 28-29, 29-28 on the judges' scorecards. Not sure, from all the stuff I looked at after the fights, I'm still not too sure if Reza Madadi had officially retired or not. But, you know, bandanas off to both these guys, man. Hell of a fight. Surprised I didn't get fight of the night or any other performance of the night, because I was so impressed with that fight. And the fight before it, which I believe did get fight of the night, or at least one of the performance of the night. And that is Bojan Velkovic, who defeated Nico Masuke. TKO punches in the third round, 4:37 left. And let me tell you, this was one of those fights where these guys were just back and forth, and you were like, I just, so hard to really even explain. It really is, man. They were just incredible, and back and forth for all three rounds. But and you probably, I don't really know how most of these scorecards were working out, but you can probably think that Nico could have been possibly even winning these fights, man, and fights winding down, man. This war back and forth, technical war, man, not sloppy at all. Like, even with a lot of the takedowns and in the transitions and everything, this was a great fight. If you missed this fight, if you have the Fox Sports app or on demand, if you get a chance, man, or if you go back and watch this fight. I'm not sure on how stuff shakes out on UFC Fight Pass. I was trying to show my father the fights, the heavyweight fights from UFC 211, which obviously just happened, which I bought. I usually buy the fights a lot of times through YouTube, not through the cable company. Anyway, I also got Fight Pass, so he's been wanting to watch it, and I didn't, so I was gonna just give him my tablet to watch, on the UFC, on my, through UFC Fight Pass on the, app that way. And it's still not available, so I think it might not come out until after the next pay-per-view. I'm not sure. And if I finally figure that out, I'll let people know. And if you already all know, put that in the comments and let me know. If how that shit really works out with the UFC Fight Pass and the UFC, network and whatnot. I know that WWE Network, everything is like readily available, like right away, and that's so awesome, actually. And the UFC doesn't. I know the UFC doesn't do that. They don't sell their pay-per-views throughout on their network, but they should offer some type of package for some pay-per-views, and maybe if you buy and then throw in a discount in there, that might get some. Dude, that would get you guaranteed money on a certain amount of pay-per-views, and I think that would be a good thing. Might help them generate more pay-per-view buys without altering the cards and the rankings and all these interim belts, and not making matchups that they should make because of entertainment value more so than value of sport, because everyone knows that the New York Giants versus the New England Patriots is more sexier Super Bowl. It's going to get more huge, bigger ratings. Same thing with a Dallas Cowboy, New England Patriots Super Bowl. It's going to be huge ratings rather than, say, the Indianapolis Colts versus Seattle Seahawks, like one of the very, or, even, unfortunately, even Denver Broncos or anyone besides some of those huge market teams, man. It's the same thing with these, how they're trying to sell a lot of these fights. And that's why you're seeing the McGregor-Mayweather fight, and that's why you had the media just pumping this up like crazy. The media is what created this fight. I mean, fighters can throw whatever they want out there, man. We got 2 more fights to review, but before I review these last 2 fights, anybody can say whatever they want. McGregor can call out whoever he wants. For Christ's sake, McGregor can call out, Triple H. Frickin' McGregor could call out, anyone he freaking wants to. He decided to call out Floyd Mayweather, and there's a lot of these media types that feel that honestly think that McGregor has this huge chance, and they really think McGregor's gonna knock Floyd out, and that's what they want to see, and that's why they pumped this fight up so much. Does McGregor have no chance? Of course he has a chance. Anyone has a chance. But what's is it the possibility? Probability? Is it probably going to happen? No. Is it possible? Sure, anything's possible. But is it probable? No, it's probably not going to happen. Some of these best fighters in the world, one of the best fighters in the freaking world right now, best boxers on the freaking planet, is Canelo Alvarez. Okay? Yeah, Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez. He just fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and, dominated him. He fought Floyd, and that's one of the best freaking fighters in the world. Fighting Triple G next, man, like they didn't set that shit up, okay? But he couldn't touch Floyd. And he's a big dude. Now he's like the size. He is like the size of Conor. Big difference is I don't believe that Canelo Saul Alvarez. That's why I was getting confused for a minute. I don't think that Canelo is a southpaw. Southpaws give Mr. Mayweather some trouble, and we'll see how this fight shakes out. If you watch my video, which is in one of the card annotations, you'll see that I had predicted this. This is back in the beginning of April. I predicted this fight was going to get signed, and they're going to fight in September, and that's what I'm still standing by, no doubt. McGregor will fight, and assuming nothing crazy happens to him, which I don't think will. I don't think this will also be a 12-round fight. I think it's going to be like a 10-round fight. You do have to remember that, boxing and a lot of these commissions, when it comes to boxing, they do it, from what I know and from what I believe, they have certain rules, certain regulations. Most of the time, a guy that's never fought a professional boxing fight, they're not going to give him a 12-round fight. He might get a 10. It might be an 8-round fight. That also might depend on what Floyd wants and how they're going to negotiate this. It's definitely going to be pretty interesting, but I do predict it will be finalized pretty soon. There's not going to be too much crazy back and forth. There might be some things like little kinks to work out. This fight is going to end up playing out the same way that the Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao fight played out. I'm talking about the way it played out from ticket sales, from the venue, from freaking just everything about it. Tickets are going to be ridiculous. They're stupidly priced. You're talking about at least an $80 pay-per-view, possibly $100. That's how they're going to divvy up that money. That's how they're going to really justify giving Floyd $100, McGregor $25 in those pieces of the back end. It's going to get at least 2.5 million buys. I don't think it's going to do what the Manny Pacquiao fight did. Floyd Pacquiao, don't think it's going to do that. You got to remember, boxing is such a huge sport in these other countries, where MMA and the UFC and has not totally caught on yet, even though there are mixed martial arts and different forms of martial arts in a lot of those Asian countries and whatnot, and like say the Philippines, like say where Manny Pacquiao's from, and that's a lot of where his fan base comes from. And I don't remember the Canelo Alvarez fight when especially with the Chavez, I think they're saying that did like 2 million buys. You gotta remember when you're talking about the Mexican market and how they feel about boxing. So it's huge, man, huge. You're not going to see that type of draw from these boxing fans aren't going to come out in droves and buy this pay-per-view like I think like the MMA fans are going to kind of do. Because your boxing it's almost like a no-win situation for them right now, man. And you almost wonder. It kind of sucks because you'd want someone like when Ray Mercer fought Tim Sylvia, and I believe that was in an MMA fight. Believe it was. You can check that out on YouTube. Ray Mercer, former heavyweight champion, former just tough badass dude, fought Tim Sylvia, former UFC champ. Big 6'7", just monster. And when Mercer just landed this right and then just took Sylvia out like just like a tree. It was like he took Sylvia out like you rip a branch like off a lilac tree, just what I mean. Like it was like that. It was that crazy. And I think that's what boxing fans in the boxing community would love to see happen to an MMA fighter stepping into the boxing ring, considering what things like the few times that boxers have stepped into the MMA realm, either in the octagon or wherever. I mean, that was like the only time that Ray Mercer Tim Sylvia fight was like that only time, because when James Toney stepped in against Randy Couture, and I was up there in Boston when that happened, and all the hype around that and how they built that shit up, man. And James Toney spent $200,000 on a wrestling coach, and you were hearing so many rumors going into that, just in especially like the days leading up to that at the expo and all that, and what people were talking about with Tony. And then I talked to a few people in the press, like the English guy there, Garrett, the dude with the long hair. I can't remember his last name. I'm sorry, bro. He was a hell of a nice guy. John Morgan there from MMA Junkie. There's a couple guys that I had talked to at the expo that weekend, where they were kind of like, no, man. They're like, James Toney is no way he's even thinking about wrestling. He's going to come in there and just swing. And that's all he really did. And then Randy Couture went for the low single and got him down and transitioned and there and choked him out. And it was pretty quick, and that's kind of what you expected. And it was also one of the more disappointing things of that night was, BJ Penn lost to Frankie Edgar again. And I think that was what this shirt was from, actually. So, one of those times when, BJ did not look good against Frankie Edgar, man. It was always a bad matchup for him. Always a bad matchup. But to get back to Floyd and Conor real quick, that's how I think they're going to split the money. That's when I think the fight's going to happen. That's how many buys I think it's going to happen. It's going to possibly get probably 2, which will be insane. Obviously, any which way they think about it, especially if it's a higher price tag than what the normal UFC pay-per-views are. And I think that if they do go with these MMA fighters versus boxers, say on the undercard or on the main card, obviously the main event will be the Floyd Conor fight. But also, how does this get divvied up? I mean, Showtime has a hand in with Floyd, and UFC is its broadcasting, and there's still a lot of things to get worked out, but I think a lot of those things were worked out, I think, beforehand for them to even start negotiating with Conor and how Dana has negotiated it. And somebody brought this up the other day, and this is the last I'm going to say about it, and then we're going to, I'm just going to read the results from the last two fights of the night, and then I'm going to get into Bellator. But, Dana had said, somebody had said about Dana that, if he's able to put this fight together with, these two guys from two different sports and to actually get this fight done within the amount of time that's going to get done, can he be considered probably the best promoter, or at least the best promoter of this modern day era? Most likely, yeah. You look at all these jerk off boxing promoters that are out there, especially Bob Arum. I can't believe Bob Arum is still promoting. He's making deals from like a nursing home out there in Southern California, wherever the hell he works out of. I know that De La Hoya's got his hand in there, and he's been very vocal about. He's been super vocal about how this fight's going to destroy boxing and everything. So we'll see how this shakes out. Hopefully, we'll hear in the next couple weeks. I think they'll announce if all this stuff gets signed, they'll announce it, Mayweather, and they'll announce it. They'll just give it a quick it's signing. They'll let these guys tweet it out or do whatever they normally do on their social medias, and then you'll see like this huge, ginormous freaking press conference. We'll see that during International Fight Week, and that's where you'll see them hype up the fight. And this fight will probably be in Vegas, probably at the MGM Grand, that new freaking arena there, outdoor thing or whatever the hell they built, and in September. And I think it's going to cause Triple G and Canelo to have to move their date, and they'll probably end up having to move it out a few weeks. But I think that'll actually benefit them, being that Canelo, just recently fought, so it might actually benefit him to take, a couple extra, a little bit of time off, and then, maybe make that fight, say, a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, maybe even a month after, the Floyd Conor fight. So that was a long one. I've been wanting to get that off my chest for a bit. Like I talked about Conor in the State of the 155, episode 1 of the Objective Perspective podcast, my exclusive podcast to the 203 Fight Network that's here on YouTube.com. Thank you for watching. Again, if you are just joining us, I'm Mark G. This is the 203 Fight Network. I have just recapped the results from UFC Fight Night 109 Stockholm. That was this morning. If you're on the East Coast, and if you're on the West Coast here, if you're on the continental United States, that was this morning, but it was in the evening in Stockholm, Sweden, from the Globe, the Ericsson Globe in Stockholm. Alexander Gustafsson defeats Glover Teixeira in the 5th round by knockout. Also, big time, not upset, but just big time fight. The co-main event, Volkan Ozdemir defeats Misha Serkinov. First round knockout, 28 seconds in. Also, Peter Sabata defeated Ben Saunders in the 2nd round via TKO. Started with a knee. Incredible fight. Sabata is definitely going to be looking to step up in competition. Omari Akhmedov defeated Abdul Rasak Alasan by split decision. That was a close fight. Great fight in there, but Alasan striking was not enough. He did land some hard shots, but I think the wrestling of Akhmedov is what we had come about. Nordin Taleb beat the young Oliver Enkamp, the Swedish favorite, by unanimous decision. This was a great fight, man. This kid's a young and up-and-comer. Nordin Taleb, just the older lion, just totally looked like he just got stronger throughout this fight, and you could see Encamp getting better with him, better as the fight went on and more comfortable, but still not enough for him to take down Talib. Talib wins unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. A judge did give one round to Encamp in the first fight of the main card, which started at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, was Jack Hermanson defeating Alex Nicholson TKO punches and strikes in the first round, 2 minutes in. Now, went over I went over this entire card there before. Just wanted to give anybody who might have been tuning in a little bit late there. I know I'm an hour and 10 minutes in. I'm going to go a little bit longer. I do want to talk a little bit more about TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt and The Ultimate Fighter, which I review every Wednesday night, which I'm going to be doing live. My last video review for The Ultimate Fighter was live Wednesday night. Usually get it going around 11:30. Try not to go too long. 11:30 around 12. Try to keep them about a half hour. It's only an hour show. Try not to ramble on too much about too many other things. But I don't have much to do right now. I'm in between doing some loads of laundry, so I figure screw it. I can do my live review and recap and make it as long as I want. And hopefully there's more than one person watching. But I don't think it doesn't really matter at this point. If you are watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much. I did miss a couple fights on the UFC Fight Pass Prelims, and that was Darren Till, who defeated Jason Arias by unanimous decision. Till missed weight by 6 pounds. Very disappointed in that. Still undefeated in the UFC. Caught the tail end of this fight. Wasn't really too bad, I guess, but like I said, Till did seem a little bit bigger and pretty big for a feather. I think it was featherweight. I'm not even sure, so I'm not even going to try to go there. But the first fight of the day was Hasovic versus Marcin Held, the Bellator vet. Fought a very valiant fight, man, and then ended up losing this fight with 7 seconds left, knocked out 7 seconds left in the third round. So finished very late, unfortunately. I'm going to try to go back and watch that here at some point because I heard that was a really good fight. Looks like Marcin Held is going to go back to the drawing board. So I wish him luck in his endeavors. That was his third UFC loss in a row, and was finished that time. So hopefully he's okay, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But that is your recap for UFC Fight Night, UFC Stockholm, UFC Sweden, UFC Gustafsson, Teixeira, however we want to call it. It was definitely a great night of fights, man. I was a great day. Boom, take a drink. Was super impressed with a lot of guys on this card and the way they fought, and we'll see. I want to see Joaquim Silva get a little bit more of a step up in the 155-pound division, which is just full of killers, and he looks like he's ready to take on some of those guys there in that 10 to 15 honorable mention, top 10 range. You know what I'm saying? So, whoa, sorry about that. 203 Fight Network. I'm Mark G. Let's transition over to something we don't talk about too much on the channel. Something I've been wanting to talk about more and try to fit a little bit more into my format, and that is Bellator. Bellator NYC, Bellator 180, coming up in June 24th, I believe, in New York City, Madison Square Garden. It's going to be the first major event at Madison Square Garden, besides the event held in November by the UFC. And I say major event, and I'm not trying to downplay the World Series of Fighting. I know people are, the World Series of Fighting did an event. Yeah, they did it at the Garden, not at the actual, inside the actual Garden. It was a pretty decent event. It was done on New Year's. I watched it. It was during the day. Didn't have the same effect or the same feel as what you might have thought it had. I think that was because of the days that it was on. being that it was like New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, whenever it was. Justin Gaethje, I believe, fought on that card. The kid's a beast. He's fighting. Coming up, he is fighting in July. I cannot wait to see him fight Michael Johnson, who apparently likes to eat pieces of shit. So, just reminds me of, you eat pieces of, I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? So it's just kind of crazy, the banter. They went back and forth during that press conference. If you missed that, go on YouTube, look up UFC Summer Press Conference 2017. Pretty insane. But, TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt canceled. Very disappointed in that. Talked about it a little bit earlier on the show so far. I don't think it's definitely not going to affect me watching the Tough, who TJ's doing a great job as a coach. He's basically undefeated. Kind of really curious to see if Cody's team wins any of the fights and advances at all. I believe they probably will because of the wild card that will happen. But other than that, this week I believe Joe Stevenson is fighting Justin Lawrence. So like Randy Couture's illegitimate son. But that should be very interesting as well. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to talk about Bellator. I've been saying this for a while now, and if you're just tuning in, thank you for joining me. Mark G here, 203 Fight Network. This is my review and recap of UFC Fight Night 209, UFC Stockholm. Also talking about, just finished that up, changing gears and switching gears and moving over to Bellator NYC. If you're a loyal listener to the channel, if you are, thank you very much. If you're not, please subscribe, hit that like button. I don't bombard you with videos. I usually put something out with some content of at least 20 minutes or more, and I'll always be talking about UFC, giving my perspective on fights, predictions, reviews, previews, recaps, results, matchups, you name it. But let's talk about this matchup. The main event for Bellator NYC, Chael Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva. Wanderlei, who has not fought. Do you all realize that Wanderlei has not freaking fought since he beat Brian Stann, which was like close to 6 years ago? I have two tablets here. I guess I can look it up, but I don't want to at this point. Can you freaking believe he has not fought in that amount of time? He's ran out on a drug test, and he's been defended by Chael Sonnen for the fact that how he ran out on a drug test. And man, if freaking Chael was his lawyer, and I was on that jury panel, I would definitely acquit Wanderlei Silva for running out on that drug test from how the explanation came from Chael. Now, him being banned for life for that is a little bit insane. It's the same type of insanity of them banning freaking Nick Diaz 5 years and fining him fucking 150,000 or whatever the hell they fined Nick Diaz for a cannabis positive test. You serious? That's just ridiculous. And it was ridiculous when it happened. It's ridiculous that that's one of the causes that Nick Diaz has not fought in nearly 3 years. And it's ridiculous that anyone thinks that Wanderlei Silva is going to be fighting in 3 freaking weeks. Nobody's talking about it because they need to sell more tickets to this event, and they know they're not going to sell more tickets to this event if Wanderlei is taken off this card. And they know they'll probably have to give a freaking refund back to some people if Wanderlei doesn't make this card. Now, the New York Commission is freaking insane. They've had nothing but problems with this New York Commission. Fighters such as Chris Weidman, for instance, a kid who's been fighting professionally for a decent amount of time, okay? Former UFC champion, has fought all around the world. If you look at his background, fought in the neighboring state of New Jersey in his early professional fights. His only fights in his home state of New York, where the commission is new, has been nothing but a problem. A big problem. He's had problems. There's been problems. Breast implant problems. Freaking Holden towel problems. I mean, you name it. Now, what makes anyone think that a guy who has not been licensed to fight, and last time he fought was freaking in Japan as it is, has not fought on American soil? And I mean, I really should look this up. Hold on, because and it's totally insane to me, and I'm just trying to be perfectly honest. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You can all freaking call me out on here and do whatever, but I still do not believe that Wanderlei Silva is going to be fighting Chael Sonnen in June. I don't see this fight being licensed. I don't see this fighter being licensed. How's he going to get licensed? How is he going to get licensed? He hasn't been fought in nearly 6 years. He's had drug test problems. I'm sure they've been drug testing him, or at least trying to. If it happens, but if this fight does happen, by the slim chance that if it does happen, let me not be such a negative Nancy. Sorry to all the Nancys out there. I'm not trying to put any of you down, but so let's just say this fight does happen. I can't bring up the stats right now. I'm not feeling like reaching over. Whatever. Anyway, how's this fight gonna go, man? Wanderlei Silva's gonna rush out like a freaking maniac. Chael Sonnen's gonna take him down, and we all know. We all know how that fight's going to go. I'd like to see Chael Sonnen win this fight. I'd like to see this fight, and I'd like to see Chael win this fight. I remember the altercations and the things that happened on the Tough Brazil, and I know the stories and some of the things that, at least from the Chael side, because I listen to Chael's podcast. You're welcome on Podcast One every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Check that out if you get a chance. I listen to his podcast, so I do know how he feels about Wanderlei. I do know that I've listened to Chael long enough to where when he talks about Wanderlei and when he says the things he's saying about Wanderlei, this is not him promoting the fight like a normal time he promotes a fight. He hates Wanderlei. He literally wants to fight Wanderlei for real. You know, Wanderlei started a fight and tried to jump him in front of his wife, if I'm getting the story correct. So this is not something that is going to be taken very lightly. There's a lot of great fights on this card, man. You got Michael Chandler fighting in the lightweight title against Brett Primus, who is an young, undefeated, dangerous guy. Douglas Lima fighting Lorenz Larkin. The UFC letting Lorenz Larkin go, I think, is probably the most unsung, like the most under the radar free agent that they've freaking let go, that nobody in the mainstream MMA media is freaking talking about, man. Lorenz Larkin, he had a victory over Robbie Lawler at 185 back in Strikeforce. Now these guys are both fighting at 170. He's had a win over Magny, I believe. I mean, he's a little bit of up and down when he first was finding, getting his feet under him in the new weight class and moving down. I mean, Larkin fought at 205, I believe, at some point from, remembering way back. So he's, excuse me, he's finally adjusted. I knew he was leaving from the start. He was never shown the proper respect, I thought, and at least from what he was saying. But I thought losing him was a big blow to the UFC 170-pound division, and him being in Bellator, Lorenz Larkin, Lima, Roy McDonald. If you want to throw in Michael Venom Page and you want to throw in, Paul Daly, Bellator has a pretty damn good 170-pound division. You can't really mess with it. Rory McDonald has a victory over the two guys that are probably going to be fighting for the belt next, the current champion Tyron Woodley and Damian Maia. Obviously, you know, he's had losses to a few other guys, but you know, I'm just telling you just the way it's kind of shaken out. Rory looked really good versus Daly. He looked very, he just very slow and methodical. Not slow like, oh, he's slow, but he just took his time. And if he needed to stand in there and bang a little bit with Daly, he would have. I mean, it's not like he didn't bang with him at all. I mean, he did throw some punches in there, but he just fought him the way he should have fought him and did a hell of a job, man. Great job. And I was super impressed by him in that fight. I always watch the fights after I don't get spiked. I'm trying to work on something to where I can see the preview card on Spike before the pay-per-view. So I'm still trying to figure that out, people, and we'll see if I can do that. If anybody knows a link where you can watch Bellator, which is normally on TV here in America, online, let me know. I did see the Fast and the Furious, the Fate of the Furious yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's actually Saturday now, if anybody wants to get slick. But we are getting into the 90-minute mark, and that's where I wanted to keep this down to. Pretty long live video. I don't know if hopefully I picked up some people. Maybe not. I hope you all enjoyed the review. I will be back tomorrow, I think. I'm going to find some stuff to talk about at some point. I will keep in tune. It'll be another live video. I think I'm going to shoot it tomorrow afternoon. Got some planting to do, some work to do in the garden. Got some of my tomato plants up and some other things. A couple other things I want to take care of. But then in the morning, so then maybe put another video up. No MMA hour this week, so we'll see if I can grab some MMA hour viewers actually just while we're doing it. I'm not going to normally do a video on Monday afternoon because normally I work, but if they're not doing one, maybe I will, and we'll talk about the fights again, some more yesterday's fights, today's fights, yesterday's fights. We'll talk a little bit about the Ultimate Fighter coming up. The Ultimate Fighter 2026, the women, the 125-pound flyweights. We'll talk about the 115-pound women, and we'll see how that goes. But until tomorrow, I really want to thank everyone here for joining me tonight. It is getting late, and I am getting a little tired. So I'm going to go finish my medicine and get some sleep. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks again for joining me. Thank you all so much. I appreciate every one of you. And if it was just one of you, I appreciate you. Hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. I started the review at around 15 minutes. That lasted for a while. I jumped around a little, talked about McGregor, talked about Mayweather, talked about all that stuff. I'm going to go. I'm getting antsy. Can't look at the camera no more. Very tired. Very tired. But thank you, fight fans. I do, once again, like I say, appreciate it. Mark G is out.